Hi, this is Greg with Walnut Ridge RV. Today we're going to be doing an orientation video on our new clippers, the 12.0 OD. So we'll start up here in the front. Of course, you have your manual tongue jack, which could easily be swapped out into a power tongue jack. You have one single 4.5 gallon LP tank or 20-pound LP tank, which would be full at the time of delivery. So those operate fairly easy once this is actually hooked up. You just got a simple on and off valve. You don't have the auto switch over regulator because you only have one tank. It's just got an easily wing nut here to lock it in place so it doesn't go anywhere while you're traveling. Behind that you'll have a 12-volt deep cycle marine battery that's going to keep, be able to run your lights and your water pump and little things like that. If you are dry docking or pulling over on the side of the road somewhere, your truck will be charging that battery at all times. The batteries that are on there are not maintenance free, so it's something you want to check every 6 months or so. Just make sure there's two little caps on the top of the batteries. You pop those off. You can check the water levels and make sure that they are up to the bottom of the, it's pretty obvious when you look at them. If they're not and they're a little low, you want to fill those with distilled water only, and that's a very important thing to do. Batteries they lose their water, they can overcharge. They won't hold a charge very long, so it's definitely something you want to keep up on in terms of maintenance. Moving around this side, of course you have big open storage here. Doesn't really have anything in it besides the canvas, and there's your cranks and everything are in there also. Here, this clipper does have a water heater. So this is a 6-gallon gas only suburban water heater. Fairly simple to operate. It uses an anode rod here at the bottom as a drain plug, so that'll any impurities in the water will attach to that rod. So that rod's something you have to either replace, sometimes once a year depending on how much you use it. When you take it out, it'll be corroded. Usually you can just wire brush that off and keep using it. You'll kind of know when it's time to replace it. Other than that, it's a fairly simple operation. Once you have water in the tank, you'll have a switch on the inside that you'll flip and it'll light as long as your LP's full and you have a LP tank on. And from there, it usually takes 15-20 minutes for the heat to actually heat up the water. You do have a pressure relief valve. That's something you'll want to watch. So when you go to fill the tank from the inside, once you hook up your water, usually I'll just come out here, open that up and wait till water starts to flow out of that valve. That'll push all the air out and it'll make sure that it gets completely full. And also you'll want to open it like that when you go to drain the water heater because it's under quite a bit of pressure. So if I just pulled that plug out without doing that, it's going to shoot out at high force, and being eye level here, you don't want that to happen. So water heater is pretty simple. Next to that, you have two other water sources. You have your fresh tank, so if you want some water while you're traveling, if you have the weight capacity on the vehicle, you can fill this up before you leave. And if you had to pull over somewhere in a parking lot, you would have a water source because your battery up front would power your water pump, which would suck from this tank and give you the water you need. Now when you get to your campsite, you don't want to keep using that. You can hook up your city water connection into here. So just get you a water hose. You want to use a pressure regulator anytime you're hooked up to an RV. Put that into here, turn it on, you have an unlimited water supply throughout the camper where there's water. Now next to that, you have a couple other, you have a coax input, so if you wanted to hook up to cable, Parks cable, if they happen to have one, you could through here. You have a solar option that can be purchased separately. This is where you'd plug in, that would charge your battery. Oh, you have a power cord back here. It's non-detachable. It's usually a 25 to 30 foot cable. It comes out and just pushes back in. You don't have to worry about it getting left behind or stolen or anything like that. You have your furnace exhaust. Not much to that. It's going to blow out hot air and suck in outside air into it. The only thing you'll want to do is keep mud dauber screens on those. Pretty important because mud daubers, bees, ladybugs, stink bugs this year, they're real bad about getting back in there. They get to the squirrel cage and they build a nest, block it up. They can break the fins off. I've seen that a few times. So definitely one of those things you want to have on your camper as soon as you buy it. At the rear, we got some lights back here, got some speakers on the outside. Of course, this one's got a spare tire. It's got a rear entry and a side entry. You have an outside shower here, which is just like any outside shower. It's just hot and cold, simple operation. Pulls out of there. Wash the dogs off, wash your feet off before you go back inside. Now below that you have a opening here, which usually for your sink to drain. These usually don't run off tanks from the inside. Or underneath it doesn't have any dumps, so it uses that to fill your sink or drain the sink out. You have a refrigerator access vents panel here too. So this one's a vent. This one here's where all your usually the board and everything is. You don't need to get in here too often on these. You want to clean it out periodically. I think every 6 months or so, a couple months, you're going around doing your maintenance inspections and things like that for sealants. You could check in here. Now this one fires from the outside too, so you'll have to get in here a little bit more often. So you've got, let's see, 120. So it does 110 and 12 volt. It's got a manual sparker for the gas side of it, so you'll want to push down, turn it to whatever, usually high to start off with, and then back here you have an igniter. So you hold that down, spark it a few times, and once you can see a flame over here, you'll hear it. We don't have LP hooked up, so it won't work right now, but that's how you would light it if we're going to go on gas. But if you're going to stay plugged in through the 30 amp cord, you can put this switch on, and that'll give you your 120 power. Over here, you'd want that switch on if you are going to use the 12 volt side or the gas side of it. Also have a slight temperature control here for the 120 volt side, 0 to 7. You can only use one at a time on these. They're fairly simple. They don't require a lot, but you do have to manually light the gas source. Go ahead and shut that off for now. Panel back on. There is a fuse block in here, so if something isn't ever working, for some reason the 12 volt's not working, you can check that fuse and make sure. Alright, moving down here. Let's see, we got a rack on the top, which is nice because you lose some of your storage on some of these smaller clippers, but it gives you, some space up there next to your air conditioner to put your whatever luggage or anything like that. You've got the secondary door. It's got a standard door lock on it like the back. That's pretty much the outside. Biggest thing on these is you want to make sure that you check the sealant that goes around the outside, backside, fronts, and make sure that you don't get gaps or anything like that in it. You don't want leaks. That's the last thing you want, obviously. So go ahead and go inside. Starting off on the right, you have your radio, which is fairly self-explanatory, really easy to work. You have light switches here. You got a 120 outlet that's GFI protected, so any of the outlets, that one, the one over there behind the sink, if you ever see this red light on, you'll just want to push the black button until it trips. So if one of them trips, it'll trip all of them, so you just want to watch out if your outlets aren't working. Here you have your charging center. You got 2 USB ports and then a 12 volt cigarette lighter style plug, charge your phone, whatever. You got your sink over here, which, like I said, drains to the outside out there. So, you got your water heater for gas. It's got a simple on and off switch. It's also got a fault light on it. So, when you turn it on, that light will go off once it lights. So, if its light stays on after a minute or so, you'll know it didn't light. Usually, you have to flip it off, turn it back on, let it go again. From here you have your water pump, so if you are going to use the fresh tank on board, you can flip that on, that way you can get your water. Of course, another outlet. You have your furnace thermostat here, pretty simple, just turn it on, just flip it from the top. low to warm. Let's see, we got the stove here. These are manual lights. Flip it down like this. You just turn it to whatever temperature you'd like. Push down on it, and then just, you don't have to push down, but hold a lighter here until it lights. So. Below that we have your little refrigerator. So if you're, most of the time you'd run it off your 30 amp cord out there if you are going to stay plugged in. But if you don't have that option, you can use the gas side. These don't take very long to cool since they are pretty small. It gives you an option. It's better than having nothing as far as the fridge goes. It does have a full-size Gracefed microwave in it, just like most of the other RVs out there. Got plenty of outlets on this back wall, and then over here you have a thermostat for the roof-mounted AC, which this does have. So it's just got, you got fan options, high-low, auto. When you're using the air conditioner, you want to keep it usually on auto. You can go hit it again, go down to cool, and then mess with your temperature from there. Now this will come on and say furnace because these are programmed to run off a normal camper that has a furnace attached to this, but since it's on a separate thermostat, you don't use the furnace on this style thermostat. And the last thing would be over here, you have your breaker box. Got your fuses in here, your 12 volt side, your 15 amps, and you have 140 amp, which is your converter itself. So if you ever came in here and the lights weren't working, but your microwave was, or if you had a TV or your outlets were, you might check that 40 amp fuse to make sure that the converter didn't blow. And so now they'll usually have a light next to them, so if one does blow, it'll light up next to it as long as power is being pulled from that source. And then your breakers are just for your 110 side, so if you wanted to shut something off like your AC, you didn't want somebody messing with the thermostat, you could do that. Or if something's not working, that's the first place you check. And then right next to that you have a gas leak detector. That's a 12 volt powered by the battery up front. It's always on. Sometimes those beep if the battery gets low. We get that call quite a bit, and the battery's somewhat dead or it's almost dead, but that keeps beeping. They're made to do that. Nothing's wrong with it. It just means you need to charge your battery. Let's see, we've got not too much else. These do have, you got another light switch back here, and then this does have a porta-pot with it. It's a manual dump you can use if you wanted to. It's got a tank at the bottom you can take out, go dump somewhere, and go from there if you want to use that option. It gives you an emergency option. So yeah, that's pretty much it in these units. Fairly simple. So this is the Clipper 12.0 OD, and I'm Greg with Walnut Ridge, and we'll see you next week.